everyone. Welcome to the Tarzana Film Festival at Comic Con. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Adam Weissmuller, almost like Johnny Weissmuller. Thanks a lot, Adam, for joining us on the show. Yeah.
Oh, I'm honored.
Yeah. Thanks for having you. Just a quick question. For those who don't know, so are you like the grandson of Johnny Weissmuller?
Yes, Johnny has 3 blood grandchildren: myself, my brother, and my cousin, and that's it.
Okay.
Now, of course, we have offspring and all of that, but there's only 3 grandchildren of his.
Okay.
That's it. I'm his firstborn grandson. I'm Johnny's daughter's firstborn son.
Okay, wow. All right, so you're the first in line for the throne. Kind of thing. Okay. Yeah, so just one more. Have you read any of the Tarzan novels by Edgar Rice Burroughs?
Absolutely. When I was a boy, I grew up in the 80s. There wasn't a lot of, video games and all the stuff that's going on now. And, we had books. And I read the, I think they were Ballantine versions, the black ones. Remember the black paperback novels?
That was like in the 60s, right?
I think they were first in the 60s, but they were re-released in the 80s.
That's long ago.
And
yes.
And the guy in the local bookstore knew who I am and who I was back then, and he made sure that he had the thing stocked up with those books. And I read probably, without exaggerating, probably a dozen of them. I know there's many more, but I read probably a dozen of them. And the first couple I read probably 3 or 4 times.
Okay, nice. That's fantastic. Yeah. So what is your earliest memories of Johnny Weissmuller? I mean, when was the first time that you actually know, okay, Johnny is actually, with family?
Yeah, well, again, I grew up, when I was a youngster, it was the 70s, and we didn't have anything except for 3 channels on the TV back then. Yeah. And one of the channels every weekend would play Johnny Weissmuller Tarzan movies. Yeah. Wow. So my very first memories of my grandfather are actually seeing him on TV. And I was very confused. I'm embarrassed to say. I thought everybody's grandpa was on TV.
Yeah, I know. Who's that guy on
TV? Yeah. And those are my first memories of him. I actually called him Grandpa Tarzan. That's what we called him. That Tarzan yell was my great grandfather's, Johnny's dad. He would yodel in the old country in the beer gardens, and he taught Johnny how to yodel in Chicago.
Oh,
and so Johnny learned to yodel.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is amazing. Yeah. What?
It's amazing. And when the producers of Tarzan said, Tarzan has a yell or a hoot that he does, to call the animals. Do you have anything like that, Johnny? And he says, well, I got my old man's yodel. And they said, well, do it. And he did it. And they said, perfect. And they added some stuff. I think they ran it forwards and then put it backwards at the same time.
Okay, yeah. Wow.
So it goes like front to back to front, the whole thing.
Up and down. Wow.
Yep. Yeah. And I think they added an oboe or something in the falsetto part.
Okay.
There's a video on YouTube about that explains exactly how they did it. The guy reproduced it pretty well, but he ended up being able to replicate that pretty well.
Yeah, it's a nice trivia. Yeah, it's amazing actually. I mean, when you think of the Tarzan yell, then you can almost not think of anything else. I mean, it's almost like it cannot be done in any other way. That is the yell, not again.
Yeah. If you hear like, didn't Buster, oh God, what was his name?
Master
One of the other yes, didn't he have like a yell that was really weird?
Yeah, it was almost like a scream when you pinched him or something.
Yeah.
It's amazing. I mean, I have a lot of respect for Weissmuller, and also, I mean, we grew up with Weissmuller as the first Tarzan since we were 6 years old, and when we first saw Tarzan on screen, you know, regarding the books or how it was written or what everybody says, for some reason, when you see Johnny Weissmuller, then that is Tarzan. I don't know what it is. He has that something about him that is Tarzan. And to everybody in the world where I met, wherever in the world I go, and I talk about Tarzan, that almost everybody first, like you just said, Johnny Weissmuller. They don't say any of the new actors afterwards. Everybody's first Weissmuller. And I don't know, to me, I just enjoy those movies. I mean, we also have all Johnny's films, and it's something like almost like this nostalgia. I just keep rewatching and rewatching. I enjoy the new movies, but there's something about the old movies that's everlasting.
Yeah, I think that you know, just the way that he was built from swimming, you know, and I think back in that time period, not everybody exercised.
Yeah,
you know, they all had pot bellies and, you know, were smoking cigarettes and all of that. And I think that Johnny kind of personified Tarzan, who was already in the public kind of eye, you know what I mean? And when he came along, it just kind of fit. And, you know, even with his swimming background, it kind of fit with Tarzan. And I think that, you know, his timing was exceptional when it comes to that.
It's all about timing. I think I think well, Tarzan in general inspired so many young people, you know, to become either a better man or aspire to become either a hero or just, you know, the best he can be. But what do you think is the importance of superheroes, like comic heroes or superheroes in today's times? You think it's still relevant?
I do. You know, I think that, you know, now we're going to get into some kind of heavy stuff, but I think that the way that there's a lot of negativity in today's society, it's almost like negativity sells. You know what I mean? So they keep cranking it out and just putting it on the news and even doing movies about it and shows about mass murderers and just all this negative stuff. I think that superheroes and, you know, Tarzan in particular is one of the last bastions of goodness and wholesomeness. You know what I mean? As far as popular society, if you think about it, there's not a lot of positive role models these days, except for superheroes.
Exactly. I mean, they do anything to sell the character, you know, but like you said, morally and, you know, with all those virtues and values, for not a superhero, but an action hero or adventure hero, you don't have that anymore these days. You know, exactly.
Absolutely.
If you watch Tarzan on screen and you actually hear the yell, especially for me, then something happens inside you or inside me. You know, it's like you feel like the power and the strength, and you actually feel you become Tarzan. So it's a kind of a feeling, you know. So that is very inspirational, like you said.
Yeah. Oh, I remember like, you know, yesterday watching some of those old black and white movies, and you don't see Johnny, you see everybody else on the screen, but you hear his yell in the background and you're all, here he comes.
Here he comes. Then you feel it.
Just exciting, you know?
Yeah, very exhilarating. Just a quick question. So what do you actually do now? I mean, you just went into movie direction. Did something else, writing, or what profession are you doing?
I'm a realtor in Central California. That's what I do for a living. But I decided to write my grandfather's life story, basically. And there's so much information out there now. You know, when I was young, there wasn't the information that there was on him that there is now online. Even within my family, you know, I knew very little really about him until the internet happened. And then I started researching and I'm like, holy smokes.
Yeah.
And there's reasons why that happened. You know, my grandmother cheated on my grandfather, and that's why they divorced in 1948. Yeah. My grandfather put a private investigator in 1948 on my grandma. He suspected that she was cheating down in LA, and the guy followed her around and got to the Santa Monica Athletic Club, and sure enough, she parked there and a one-armed man came out. And they had their dalliance in the car. Yeah, one-armed man. Grandma.
It sounds like a movie.
Yeah.
The movie plot.
And so they were divorced, but that's kind of a weird thing within my family, you know. Like my grandfather frankly didn't want to be around my grandmother, and therefore, you know, her kids, my mom and my Uncle John, they ended up spending time together later on. But when they were children, you know, my grandfather was off to the next starlet, you know, and he married, after my grandmother, he married a lady named Aline Gates, who was a professional golfer, and he ended up doing a lot of golfing and having a good old time, you know. And he didn't spend a lot of time with the kids though, because of that. And it left kind of a weird vibe within my family, where a lot of the information on my grandfather before the internet was wrong information. And, you know, once I started doing research, I went, whoa, you know, the real stuff has to be out somewhere, and somebody has to put it all together in one spot. And that's why you
have to write the book, so, you know, so you can tell the story, the actual story.
Yeah. Cool. And so what I did is, through all my information, you know, like there's different versions of how Johnny got the Tarzan job at MGM in 1931. And one of the versions is he was there to meet Greta Garbo. Another version is he was there to meet Errol Flynn. Another version is somebody saw him on the street who was a casting person and brought him in. But I chose the one that I, you know, have read the most of, and I figured is probably the truth. And that was the Greta Garbo one. You know, he went in there to meet Greta Garbo, and he got to the front of MGM, those big gates you see a picture of. And there's 200 people, 200 fellas sitting there, dressed up in weird clothes, smoking cigarettes and tossing the ball and doing calisthenics. And he waited his turn, and he got there to the security guard, and they said, "Hey, are you here for Tarzan?" And he didn't know what Tarzan was, but he wasn't dumb. And he said, "Yeah." And the security guard said, "Go in here, go to the left." And so he walked into the casting room, where there was a fake tree and some guys climbing the tree and people running around. And somebody spotted him, one of the casting people in this room, and said, "Hey, you kid, come here." And so he went over to the casting director, and the guy said, "Hey, pick up this girl." And he picked up the lady that was there, and they said, "Climb that tree." And he climbed up the tree. And he said later, anybody could have done this. You know, any athlete could have done this. And he said he climbed up the tree and he jumped down, and then they said, "Take your shirt off." They still didn't know who he was. And he took his shirt off, and they went, "Oh my God, you're hired. What's your name?" And he said, "Well, my name's Johnny Weissmuller." And they said, "Oh, that name's too long. We're going to have to shorten that up. It'll never fit on the marquee." And he said, "What's a marquee?" And then the casting director's assistant said, "Well, boss, you know who this is? This is, you know, this guy holds all the swimming records." And he said, "Really? Well, you can keep your name, and we'll put some swimming in the film."
They combine it. Yeah, there we go.
Yeah,
it's unbelievable. But he was still young. Was he like 28, I think? What was his age?
Yeah, well, that was 1931. He was born in 04.
04.
So yeah, 27. Yeah.
That's younger than
so
me.
At the height of his, just the very height of his like prowess, you know.
Perfect timing. Yes.
Yeah.
I have one very difficult question for you. Is Johnny Weissmuller also your favorite Tarzan?
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
I do like Ron Eli, and I've talked to him. Well, I've gone back and forth with him online a couple of times a few years ago, you know, before that horrible incident with his son.
Yeah.
But I went back and forth, and he is such a gracious, nice guy too. You know, he's the one I grew up with in color.
Oh, yeah.
You know, that was an hour-long show that they would play, you know.
Yeah.
So that was like my Tarzan when I was a kid. So between my grandfather and him, I think my grandfather, just because he's my grandpa, but my true favorite as far as watching is probably Ron Eli.
Ron Eli.
And incidentally, he said to me, he said when he was studying, you know, for the Tarzan role, when he first got it, he watched all of my grandfather's Tarzan movies, and he said he tried to mimic Johnny.
Oh, really?
My grandfather, and you know, anyway, he was a great guy that, you know, was a good man who back then, you know, when the America really or the world really needed a hero, he was there, you know, during World War II and right before that during the Depression. Right in that little time period was when he was very popular. And you know, I'm just so honored to be able to speak about him and you know, let people know what a genuinely good person he was.
Yeah, respect. I mean, we all, like you said, it's a big deal to us also, you know, and anything that Weissmuller represents, whether it's him or you or the legacy, it's a big name, and it's a Tarzan name, and we like that. And yeah, therefore, we would like to present you with a trophy and a certificate. If Johnny was alive, we would have given him also a trophy, and we had 2 trophies.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm very, very honored.
Thanks a lot, Adam. Yeah, we still have a bit of time left. If you want to maybe read something from the script.
I was going to read 2 short little stories within the story of his life.
Okay, all right.
If that's all right.
Yeah, fantastic.
Okay, so, you know, Johnny was an Olympic swimmer, and in the 1924 Olympics, he took the world's record, and, you know, he won 3 gold medals, and, you know, he beat Duke Monomoku, and he was very famous. And so when he came home from Paris in 1924, he was famous as an athlete. And so he went back to his hometown in Chicago, and the person who owned a very luxurious hotel in Chicago put him up there, you know, because he's famous, and, you know, he's an American hero now.
Yeah.
And so this hotel had a big pool, and Johnny would train in that pool of the hotel where he was staying. And, you know, he's an American hero now and a native son of Chicago. People recognize him on the street, and they call him the Illinois Flash. That's what he was called before he was. Yeah. And he trains alone for 2 hours each day in the pool in the hotel to keep up his stamina. And, you know, he has an old inner tube from a Model A tied to a rope, tied to the tied to the side of the pool. And he put his feet into the hole in the tire, and then he'd just swim, and he'd work out his shoulders, you know. And in the shallow end of the pool, there's a small boy sitting there, you know, around 9 years old, splashing around on the stairs. And 2 big men wearing trench coats, fedoras, shiny wingtip shoes, are smoking cigarettes and whispering under their breath back and forth. They never take their eyes off of the boy. And Johnny swam over and decided to help the boy learn how to swim. After an hour of swimming lessons, you know, Johnny took it upon himself to teach this kid how to swim. There's a sharp wolf whistle, and one of the men says, "Albert, it's time to go." thank the man for teaching you how to swim. And the kid says, thank you, sir, and sticks out his hand. And Johnny says, no problem, kid, keep up the good work. Johnny smiles and turns away, his mind already on the inner tube floating at the deep end. And Johnny kicks off and swims over to it, begins training again.
Wow.
2 weeks later, there's a knock on the door of his hotel room. He's still in the same hotel. Johnny's using it as his home base while training in Chicago. It is his hometown, but Johnny's volatile family is too distracting. And besides, the hotel's free. The rich owner's a fan of his, so, you know, put him up for free.
Yeah.
So Johnny opened the door, and there stands one of the fellas in a trench coat from the pool with a brown wrap package in his hand. And he hands it to Johnny. He says, it's from the boss. And he turns slowly and walks down the hall towards the elevator. Johnny closes the door, puzzled. Who's the boss, he wonders. He opens the box, and there lays a big, heavy gold watch. Johnny turns it over in his hand. There's an inscription that reads, thanks for watching out for my kid, Al Capone, on the inside.
What? Wow.
It was Al Capone's son
Was that for
that
real?
Johnny taught how to swim.
Yeah. Can you believe that?
Incredible.
That happen every day.
Yeah,
That's
incredible.
Yeah, it's very well written, and it sounds very interesting. It's fascinating. Yeah.
Things like that happened to Johnny all the time. I don't know if it was the circles that he was traveling in,
Yeah, maybe.
or what it was, but things like that happened all the time to him.
And that,
You know?
that is the stuff that you don't read about in the news or on the internet.
Yeah. You know, you can find that online. You can find that story.
Okay.
You know, the other story that I really wanted to talk about was Johnny saving many people when a boat flipped over on Lake Michigan in 1927.
Wow.
Do you think I can talk about that for a minute? Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Let's have that one.
All right. Well, in 1927, on Lake Michigan, off of Chicago, the Favorite, a 65-foot-long ferry carrying 75 people plus crew, capsized in 60 feet of water, 100 feet from the shore, right in front of Johnny's eyes. He was swimming with his brother Pete, and they took quick action and saved dozens of people between the two of them, diving down under the upturned vessel to grab people and drag them to the surface. 27 people drowned that day, but the toll would have been much worse had Johnny and his brother not been there. Between the two of them, they saved 24 other people.
Wow. Yes, that is something.
And what that did to Johnny is it made him teach kids how to swim, you know?
Yeah.
He saw the importance of that and took it to heart and went out of his way to teach kids how to swim.
Yeah.
He saw 16 of the 27 that drowned on the Favorite were children, and he saw that. There's a picture right here. Here, let me.
It's a real lifesaver. Yes.
Yeah, like the real thing. And this is stuff that I never heard about when I was a kid.
Okay.
There's a picture right here, and if you look close, there's a fella in the middle wearing a white belt.
Yeah, I see. Yeah.
With his back to us. Yeah, that's Johnny. That's Johnny, and that's the Favorite. Yeah. Now, Johnny got a letter. Now, check this out. This is what makes it so poignant. Johnny got a letter that was found with his belongings, you know, after he passed away in 1984. And it says, I have 7 children, and one day my 7 children will have their young ones. This circle of life will continue forever, or as long as God grants this earth to remain fertile within the atmosphere. But only you, Mr. Weissmuller, are responsible for this vast miracle that has come to touch my life, because it is you who rescued me from certain death and enabled me to marry and have my children. I shall always impress upon the minds of my young children to say a prayer of thanks on your behalf. And God willing, those prayers will last through eternity.
Yes, wow, that is gold. That's amazing.
Yes.
That is a real treasure. You don't get that.
It's just amazing.
Yeah.
He went through life like that. You know, I've heard so many stories of him pulling people out of the water and saving people.
So
he was an honorary lifeguard.
Yeah.
Pardon me?
No, I'm saying he's like a real life Tarzan, actually.
Yeah, he took it to heart. You know?
Yeah, he saved so many people's lives. He's larger than life. Yes, that's fantastic.
Amazing guy.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Thanks a lot for sharing all those stories. I mean, there's so much more that can come from the book. You should definitely get the book done because we want to read the book. Yeah.
Yes, it'll be good. It's going to be a documentary on him, a film.
Okay. Yeah. Well, there we go. That's what we need.
Yeah, it's going to be quite a hoot. You know, it's going to tell his whole story. And you know, towards the end of his life, he didn't have a happy ending. You know.
Yeah.
And it'll delve into the truth about all of that as well, and you know, hopefully right some wrongs that have happened in the past. And you know, he's buried in Acapulco right now, and that's the crime center of the world, Acapulco. And he still has a plot in Hollywood that he purchased in the 40s where he wanted to be buried, and we still have it. So part of this documentary is to actually bring Johnny back home to the country that he loved and put him in there with all his pals, you know, in the same cemetery where people, including me and, you know, my family, can come and honor our grandfather without having to wear a Kevlar vest and have bodyguards, you know.
Yeah, it's interesting. I hope it happens, man. I hope you can organize that to happen. I mean, that'll be a highlight in the world.
Yeah, it'll be in the documentary. It's already in the process of happening, and you know, he deserves to be back here, not buried in some little tiny cemetery because it was an easy place to put him. You know, he should be here. You know, he deserves, for what he did to this country, you know, and for this country, he deserves to be in this country that he loves.
Yeah, definitely. Adam Weissmuller, grandson of Johnny Weissmuller, thanks a lot for joining us. Your trophy and certificate is on the way. Thanks a lot for your presence. We really appreciate it.
Thank you guys so much. I'm so honored to be able to do this. And, you know, anytime you guys, you know, anytime, just give me a call.
Yeah, no problem.
It was a pleasure talking to you guys, and thank you very much.
Thank you too. Soon we're gonna meet you in person. We plan to relocate, so we're looking forward to it. Yeah, we'll meet up soon. Thanks a lot. Have a nice day in the USA.